You know what's strange? Some of the most emotionally aware, highly intelligent people you will ever meet are also some of the most perpetually exhausted. And they aren't tired from doing too much. They're lying awake, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., exhausted from thinking too much. While the rest of the house is quiet, their minds are loud. They replay conversations that ended hours ago, meticulously map out worst-case scenarios that will likely never happen, and wrestle with a brain that absolutely refuses to stop asking, what if? Psychologists have a specific term for this pattern. They call it maladaptive rumination, a tendency for the mind to circle back to the same thought loops repeatedly, especially concerning uncertainty, past events, or social interactions. This looping rarely happens because an immediate, tangible crisis has occurred. Instead, it happens because the individual is inherently thoughtful, careful, and attuned to the details around them. The very cognitive habit that makes someone intensely empathetic and considerate is the exact same habit that quietly drains their energy every single night. This brings us to the first stage of the cognitive loop, the pattern machine. Overthinkers often label themselves as weak or overly anxious, but the reality is quite different. Their brains are simply exceptionally good at processing meaning and scanning the environment for data. Studies from Yale and the University of Michigan consistently show that people who ruminate do so because their cognitive system is always looking for patterns. It's a feature of high intelligence. The problem is that the system never receives a signal to stop. This lack of an off switch leads to stage 2, the childhood adaptation. For a significant number of chronic overthinkers, this continuous mental auditing doesn't spontaneously start in adulthood. It begins much earlier, in childhood or adolescence. It often traces back to growing up in unpredictable environments. If a child lives in a household where moods shifted without warning, or where minor mistakes carried massive, disproportionate consequences, their young brain has to learn how to stay safe. It learns to think ahead, anticipate everything, and predict what's coming next. Seen through this lens, overthinking is not a personality defect. It is a highly logical, deeply ingrained nervous system adaptation. The brain is doing exactly what it was trained to do to survive. Moving inside the mind reveals stage 3, the prefrontal audit. Here, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and self-reflection, stays highly active during downtime. Meanwhile, the default mode network keeps generating internal monologue, resulting in a mind that's always online and constantly auditing. This constant activity triggers stage 4, the invisible slide. Psychologists note that turning inward to process emotions, what they call reflective rumination, can be a genuine strength, but it can slide almost invisibly into brooding rumination, a passive and distressing pattern of dwelling on problems without ever moving toward a resolution. This invisible slide carries severe daily costs. The overthinker experiences plunging sleep quality, debilitating decision paralysis, and a mounting social anxiety that builds from overanalyzing every minor interaction. This creates the illusion of mental progress, leading to stage 5, the dopamine trap. The brain releases dopamine during problem solving, even if imagined. Constructing mental arguments gives the brain a chemical reward just for the activity, independent of reaching an answer. This is why telling someone to simply stop thinking about it is neurologically useless. Their brain has a built-in chemical incentive to keep the loop running. What this constant looping ultimately buys the individual is stage 6, the empathy tax. A 2013 study published in the journal Psychological Science found a direct connection here. People who reported higher levels of rumination also scored significantly higher on measures of cognitive empathy. In the real world, this looks like a profound ability to understand and anticipate how others might think or feel. These individuals are acutely sensitive to social nuance. They are highly attuned to the unspoken emotional texture of a room, and they can precisely predict how words will land on others. But perception without resolution is incredibly exhausting. The overthinker notices absolutely everything and feels the weight of every possibility. Yet the more they think, the harder clarity seems to become. The exact same mental engine that makes them remarkably perceptive and deeply compassionate is the very engine preventing them from finding mental clarity. Psychology keeps circling back to a quiet truth. The mind cannot think its way out of every problem. Some situations and deeply rooted emotions have to be felt, decided upon, or simply released rather than mathematically solved. This represents cognitive diffusion, a practice of observing a thought loop without being pulled in, separating the mind from the thought itself. Instead of telling yourself, "This situation is dangerous," you note, "My brain is generating a concern." This creates a vital fraction of distance. That fractional distance is powerful. Understanding your cognitive patterns doesn't erase them, but observing them strips away the power they hold over you, especially when those patterns were shaped by unchosen past experiences. The ultimate challenge isn't to stop the thinking entirely or to quiet the mind by force. The challenge is to take a highly alert, historically traumatized brain and gently teach it that it is finally safe enough to rest.